Hello everyone and welcome back to JB Store Gaming, where today I'm going to be taking kind of a first impressions look should you buy Elite Dangerous. The reason I'm calling it first impressions is even though I've played this game quite a bit, there is a lot to learn, and I will admit I don't know nearly as much as a lot of the channels that focus on this that have played this a ton, but I do think it's an interesting game. It is a big space game, and we're not going to talk about No Man's Sky here, but it is a legitimately big space game where you can do what you want as far as being in a ship goes. You can do space combat, you can do mining, you can do trading, you can carry passengers, do missions, things like that. There is a lot going on in it, and in the base game you just have the space combat. With the expansion to the game, you can land on planets and use vehicles and things like that. It is a really interesting game, and I'm going to talk about whether or not it's right for you. And here's the thing, I do have somewhat mixed feelings about the games, but I really like the game, and let me explain why I think that. So I'm going to talk about 4 reasons that if this really puts you off, you maybe shouldn't buy the game. First of all, it has a very steep learning curve. I've been playing the game quite a bit, I've watched some videos on it, I've read some things online, and I still probably don't know a third of the things in the game, or how things work, or what everything does. It is kind of crazy. There's different factions, all these different components in the ships, all these different things you can do, and it's just a really steep learning curve to get into. You can enjoy it at a base level, but if you want to know everything that's going on, it's going to take you a while. Another thing, time is a negative of this, and I see that in 2 ways. First of all, it is just a huge time sink if you really want to get into it, but also there's a lot of downtime. There's traveling the system. Well, you're traveling to another system, it goes pretty quickly, but when you're traveling within a system in Super Cruise, it can take a very long time going that distance, and there is just a lot of downtime in the game in general. So there's another thing, risk reward. So right now I'm doing bounty hunting, and I'm collecting bounties on people. I can gather information by scanning. I can have cargo, all of that. When I get blowed up, it all goes away, and I better have enough money in the bank to pay the insurance off to get at least my ship back, because if I don't, I basically start back at 0. Now that's pretty easy enough to learn early on, and to make sure you do have enough money to pay off your ship, and if you start running low, you can do some easier missions and whatnot and not put yourself in danger. But if you want to really get into it, you can have quite a bit of time where you're spending, for example, at one point where I did a lot of exploring, I'd had some bounties, I had some cargo, and I was like, I'm going to go into this sector and see about doing a little bounty hunting, and I just got wrecked real quick, which can happen. And, yeah, all that was gone, and that can be really frustrating. And lastly, there is no overarching story like there is in some games that, some other space games you might expect. The story is something that you make for yourself. There are factions and things going on in the universe, but there isn't a single-player campaign in the traditional way of thinking about things. Now, here's the deal. I'm going to talk about those same exact 4 things, and then tell you why those things are good things, and maybe you should get the game. First of all, the learning curve. Here's the deal. It's kind of exciting to figure things out, both within the game and reading about things. So yeah, you can just go try to read everything, try to watch all the videos or whatnot, but there's a discovery process to this game that a lot of games don't really offer. And then, you might just see things and be like, oh, what's that? And then look up that thing specifically at some point, or figure it out for yourself. And that's something that a lot of people might find appealing, a game that just has a lot to it. It's not all apparent right at the start, but you gradually take those things in, and that can be an enjoyable process. And then when I talked about time, if it is something you want to invest time in, there are some rewards for that. There are big milestones. The first time you buy another ship, as you transition from maybe starting out as a bounty hunter and doing some missions, then maybe you become a miner for a while. Then maybe you, do big missions where you're sending people all the way across, huge amounts of light years and hoping that they don't leave, because different passengers can have different stipulations, which they get angry and decide not to stay on your ship. There's a lot of things that you can invest time to, and there's a lot there if you do enjoy that type of gameplay. And losing it all, the potential for losing it all, in some ways may actually add to the game. So for some people that would be a huge frustration and then a reason not to play the game at all, but for some people that really adds quite a bit of gravity to the game. As you're going around getting all this stuff, you have that risk reward. It's like, okay, do I stay here a little bit longer? My hull got damaged a little bit in the last fight. Do I bounty hunt a little bit longer? Do I invest in going way out where there aren't stations and doing exploring, and then hope I don't get blown up before I can get back? There are consequences to your actions imperfections in this game, and while that might definitely be a negative for some people, it's also definitely going to be a positive for some people. And lastly, I want to talk about the story. While this game doesn't really have an overarching story, if you will, it does have what you might consider emergent gameplay. So what do I mean by that? Well, this game is definitely going to be what you make of it. So I've already had a few fun examples and some negative examples. So I was talking before about a negative example. When I got wrecked really quick and I tried to get out of there, well, it was kind of funny. My engines got destroyed, and yet I managed to survive. Now, there are modules in the game that you can get, that you put on your ship, that can maybe help you repair certain things within your ship, and I don't know if they can repair essential things like engines. I don't know. There's so many things in the game, like even those repair units, and even that is a puzzle. What do you want in your ship? Do you want a ship that's strictly combat? Do you want a ship strictly for hauling, and you're not even worried about lasers or things like that? You know, how do you configure your weapons? There is a puzzle to that that's really interesting. But when I was kind of stranded out there, I was like, what do I do? And I looked up what I can do, and basically I had to self-destruct myself. I lost the potential bounties, I lost the information I had, the cargo I had, and it was a real bummer. But at the same time, I definitely do remember that moment as emergent gameplay. And there are other moments, like for example, when I got my first really big bounty, there was this rather large ship that was bigger than mine that I went after, and it almost killed me, but then I finished it off, and I got like 120-some thousand bounty, and it was like, wow, that's awesome. And at that point I was like, okay, I've taken some damage, I want to get back to the base. So as I'm flying back to a base to try to turn in that bounty, I get interdicted by another ship that pulls me out, and then I get in this fight with this other ship, and while I'm playing, sometimes I put on music or whatever, and I happen to have part of the soundtrack for Castlevania Symphony of the Night, one of my favorite soundtracks, and it's a particularly rousing song. And as I'm battling not only for my life but to keep the money that I got that I'm trying to bring back, you know, that was a really exciting moment. The first time I went to one of the big space stations, and there are different types of those, and one of them was like a town, basically. They were like neighborhoods and houses and like cars on the street going on the inside of this cylinder in space, and there are just beautiful moments like that, and you'll come across those beautiful moments from time to time. And it is a game that you make the gameplay to it, and really if it's a game that you can either play with other people over comms or join communities. There are plenty of communities where maybe you get on TeamSpeak and play together and have friends that way, whether you know the friends already or end up making friends within the game based on finding some communities that are open to new players. You know, it is something you can really enjoy. You can go in wings and go in together and things like that. So while it's a game that I certainly think can be enjoyed by the right person in single player, I'm sure it can be enjoyed even more in multiplayer with other players where you're teaming up and doing things together and going on adventures. So this is a game that does have a potential huge time sink, potential huge learning curve, the potential of losing it all, great risk and reward, and a story that you kind of have to make yourself. And at the end of the day, those four things are things that you're either going to consider a positive or negative. As I list those things, you're probably either thinking, oh, that sounds awful, why would I ever play that? Or like, oh, that sounds pretty interesting, I might want to invest some time in it. And again, if those four things are going to be a positive or a negative for you, then that should help you determine if you want to get this game. And overall, I only have the base game so far. I have been enjoying it. There are a lot more things in the expansion, being able to land on planets, engineers, and other stuff. All these things I don't even know anything about. And again, experts would be able to tell you about. But as far as the base game goes, I think it's a pretty interesting game. It is, I believe, available on PC and Xbox One right now, and PlayStation 4 is coming, is my understanding. And overall, it's a game that I personally have enjoyed my time with and plan on spending some more time in as well, because I feel like all those things end up offering to me what's interesting gameplay. But if that's something that you might say, why would I want to waste my time, have a lot of downtime, and potentially lose everything I just did, then you might want to stay away. But overall, this is a really big, I think, good looking and well executed game, and it's up to you if those aspects of gameplay sound appealing to you. But overall, it is definitely an interesting game, and if those things interest you, then I suggest checking it out. Thanks a lot for watching, everyone, and we will talk to you again soon.